All right, guys, how's it going? I just wanted to make sure we got this done with enough time for people to see it, and if they have questions, they can follow up in class, or if they want to just discuss this content going forward, it'll be available for at least a few weeks before the end of class. This should be uploaded. It'll be uploaded. It's uploaded. It should be uploaded before the first week after capstone, but uploaded. It's uploaded. Now, this is networking. When the whole point of this is job interviews. Essentially, the logic behind this was I was going to make this a quicker video just to do a run through of job interviews in a way that normally we would do like a quick run through and then have a guest. The crunch from capstone and snow days and reading week and everything else has just made this we're going to just make it its own thing. And then we're going to go through the last 3 weeks of class and make sure you guys have all the material that you guys need. Now, in putting together a web version of this, it became very clear that it would be really beneficial to do another run through of the networking content. It becomes such an important part of what makes an effective job interview that I want to make sure that we at least do a refresher, especially because I know we did the networking lecture near the end of when people were starting to get really stressed over capstone and people were starting to get really freaked out. So I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to do a quicker talk on networking. This will have new stuff for the people who weren't in the networking class. And it'll help set the stage for doing the job interview content, which we'll do in the second half of this video. I'll warn you guys, this might be a little bit longer. This is probably going to be close to 30 minutes to 45 minutes of me just like straight talking to camera. But we'll see how it goes. It's only 65 slides, which is not that bad, but we'll power through and we'll get it done. So, the biggest thing that needs to be stressed here is that at the end of the day, networking is always going to be relevant. Quite simply, you guys are working in a technical field. And as technology constantly gets updated and constantly gets innovated and built on, that same group of people who are innovating, that same group of people who are relying on trying to find those tricks and tips and ways to get around technology, they're going to constantly be working away in their own lab and working on solutions. And having a network of people like this who you can work with to either share your ideas with or see how they're solving problems that you might run into is incredibly valuable. Beyond that, just the simple need, especially if you're in an indie field, to keep your ear to the ground on who's looking for work where the next job might come up, what the next technology may be, is going to be incredibly relevant. Even if the only networking thing you guys do is get like the basic annual pass to just show up at GDC every year and just see what people are working on, is going to be an incredibly valuable element of networking. But as you guys move up in the world, you're going to be starting to look for people who can help you solve problems and who can come onto your teams and work with people who are either your peers, your superiors, or even your staff. And at that point, networking becomes extremely valuable because that's how you get to know the right people to bring onto your team and to build out the crew under your skill set. So never ever forget, you're going to be constantly doing this and constantly relying on this to help you both succeed and to help everybody around you succeed. As a brief aside, for anybody who hasn't seen it, getting an understanding of new technologies like the new Quixel plugin for Unreal, and for people who can understand and use that tool effectively, these are the ways that are going to be really effective. So basically, if you got time, pause the video, go look up Quixel's Unreal video. Yes, it looks insane. Yes, it's real. It's ridiculous. But networking will allow you to get the jump in these technologies before a giant announcement like GDC, so that you've already snapped up the techs and you aren't part of the feeding frenzy as people are trying to figure out who can now work with this plugin. Everyone's swarming Quixel and Quixel's upping their prices because everybody wants to work with them or people are calling bullshit. If you have the right network, you can be ahead of the game when you want to work with people. And it's more than just being like, here's my card. We've talked about this in class. A business card is not an introduction. A business card is not a conversation. A business card is not a positive impression. A business card is a good first impression or usually good second impression. But what a business card is a way to remind people of a positive interaction you've had. It's that mnemonic memory tool we've talked about before, MNE, if you want to go look it up. Networking really is about your ability to build relationships with people. And that doesn't mean intimacy, that doesn't mean life talks or deep conversations over a burrito at 3 o'clock in the morning. What a relationship is professionally are people with whom you can not necessarily share secrets with, but have candid conversations about the industry or work or where you see the industry going. Just noticing I've got a perfect little alien antenna right now. Let's scoot forward a little bit. So it's about how you can have these really reliable conversations with people and sort of candid conversations with people about how you see the industry growing or changing or new technologies, and just share with those people. Those are the people with whom you will have really, really valuable work sometime in your lives, or not. Maybe they'll know somebody else with whom you can have another good relationship. But that's all networking comes down to, is essentially, and I want to be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean having friends. There are many people who even I've worked with who I wouldn't necessarily consider them friends or people I even like, but you don't often get to make that choice. You don't get to work with the people you like a lot of the time. But at the same time, if you can have that professional respect for that person and act appropriately and, have those candid conversations with them still, even if sometimes it is like, I don't approve of what you're doing and here's all the reasons why. If you can do all these things effectively and productively, then that's just as valid a relationship as someone who you really enjoy working with every single day. A good network will help you essentially do way more than your job hunt. I kind of already pre-rolled this slide 2 slides ago, but essentially it allows you to share discoveries around new tech or new solutions. And obviously it helps you get work, but it also helps you find new employees when you're looking to hire people. It also just helps you get advice. And that can be way more valuable than you might think it is. Advice can come in a lot of forms, but simply just getting somebody to say, I think this is a good idea, like you should think about doing this job, is a really, really effective piece of guidance. For example, when I'm doing my first classes, like I've only been teaching at the college level for about 1.5 years now. And so being able to go to people like Umer and Chris and Scott and ask them what are effective ways to teach, what helps work with the kids, I'm having these problems. Just advice on how to deal with solutions can be really valuable, especially if they're people whose insight you value. And on the same track, having people with whom you can brainstorm with, people who you can get creative with and think about solutions can be amazing. That's something that a lot of the people at a faculty level get to do here at the school. For example, during the esports program, when Chris and I come in, and we're 3 weeks away when we hit the summer, Chris and I are essentially going to sit down with a whiteboard and go, what do we want to do next year? And that's going to be an amazing creative process. But that's special. That's something where you need to have the right people. And I feel like a lot of you guys have those classmates, and you'll probably think of them right away, with whom you can bounce ideas off of, or friends outside the program who are really good at challenging your thinking or helping you come up with new, elegant solutions. These are all really valuable things that come from having a network. And in another way, especially, again, for people who are in a more indie sphere, having a network is a really easy way to broadcast that you have a new project out or that you have new technology that you want people to be aware of. And it can be a really, really useful way to advertise. Now, the problem with building a network is I always bring it up, networking is a lot like dating. The only way to start dating is, to start actually getting out there and asking people out on dates. And as scary as it is, there's only one way to do it. It's to actually go out and ask people out on dates. Deal with it. This is the world. And you don't have to expect that your first couple of interactions are going to be incredible. Obviously, we've just done our showcases, and I know for a lot of people that was like really stressful, and really there was a lot of discovery and a lot of conversations that they walk away and you're like, fuck. But that's fun. And it's completely okay, because at some point we have to actually start trying. And we have to start learning and growing. And you're going to be better the next time. It's just like when you die in Dark Souls. You die in any video game. And you just have that moment of, fuck. but you try again. I'd like to think none of us are controller smashers where we just get so frustrated we don't want to try anymore. The only way to improve is to keep trying. It's, like trying to beat Chris's Bowser in Super Smash Bros. It's not easy. Conversations, you'll get better at them, but conversations really are just a matter of having that back and forth and having that open exchange of ideas that leaves both of you feeling like you had a positive experience. And people will follow up based on that. And that's how your network grows. And that's how you grow as a person. You can never predict where a conversation is going to come from. We were talking in the networking class a few weeks ago about how multiple students have had random conversations with people in an elevator or a grocery store. And they end up just having jobs or entire great networking additions just out of a random conversation in a grocery store. I've had multiple times where I've given my business card to people that I've just randomly Uber pooled with and had an amazing conversation. And they're like, yeah, I'm finishing my PhD in, biomed or around broadcast. And I'm like, let's talk. It can happen anywhere. And you just have to be ready. And by ready, I don't mean have 20 business cards on your person at all times. I mean, just be ready to share cool ideas with people and be ready to listen to other people's cool ideas. Just a teaser trailer for a moment. But always be ready to have that exchange with people and that sharing. And you'll always be set up for a really good networking experience. Networking events add a lot of pressure to this. When you have, even like our capstone, when you have an event that is specifically for networking, where you're going to come in and talk with people, it creates a whole other layer of perceived pressure that you've got to go and talk to people. You must go and make friends and all of these things. At the end of the day, it's a little bit fake. A networking event is simply this tacit admission that everybody wants to come and have a conversation with each other. And if you come at it with a perspective that all you want to do is just come in and have conversations with one another, then your experience, even at networking events, is going to be fine. And candidly, it's going to be very productive. So I hope for most or all of you that last week's capstone presentations kind of broke the terror around what a networking event can be, because it's really all they are. And you guys kind of got it harsher because you were put out there to present. Often, for most of you, you won't be presenting next time. Some of you are doing level up, some of you are doing showcase, things like that might change that dynamic. But at the end of the day, these networking events are just a matter of being out there and talking to people, and you'll be able to turn the tables on other people next time. And you'll be able to go up to their presentations and ask them questions. And see how the table turns, or see how the turn tables. Just come at it with a more open, positive idea, and the experience will be excellent. Because at the end of the day, they're just a great opportunity to meet people who you can have conversations with, who you know are on the same page as you. Obviously, we have to be prepared to have a conversation with people at all times. This idea that you can meet somebody in a grocery store, you can meet somebody in an elevator or an Uber, and just have a great conversation and end up, building a business or getting hired or whatever it may be. But the nice thing about a networking event is that you know for a fact that anybody you talk to there could be a valuable person to know. It can be useful for job hunting, it can be useful for, bouncing ideas, shopping around a game concept, or looking for investment, or whatever you're looking for. But just simply, everybody who's going to be there is a player in the space. Now, unfortunately, the people who you meet are in all likelihood going to be looking for jobs just like you. And that's going to make any progress career-wise difficult, since everybody's going to be fighting each other for work. And it may be hard to workshop an idea simply because, why tell a bunch of people what your really sick game idea is? That can be a challenge for people. You probably want your idea to be at a point where you can flesh it out and show that it's your idea before you want to show it off too much. Usually you'll be demoing if you're sharing an idea like that. Really, at the end of the day, and this is something that we struggled with in the lecture as well, is that networking events truly are only as good as the people who attend them. And I don't say that in a way to denigrate anybody who goes to networking events. Everybody should go to networking events. But at its core, if you're looking for jobs or insight or any kind of expertise, then you're relying on the networking event having people who can provide that in order to get a valuable experience. But you should go. You absolutely should go to as many networking events as possible because A, there usually will be somebody worth talking to, but B, it's the only way to get to know people. And getting an idea of everybody in your environment and everybody in your network is really useful. And you can always be surprised. And if people end up going to an event, typically you can evaluate an event well just by seeing who the headliners are. This is a concept we talked about in the lecture, which was that a lot of the time these networking events are like a pyramid, or more likely really a glacier. A little bit pokes out above the water, and those are our big feature people. You know, you go to GDC and guys like Tim Schafer and all these other people are there. But there's a huge amount of people who cascade down who want to talk to Tim Schafer. And then the people who know, who are like the attaches, or the people who are the business people, who are all dealing with each other and looking to collect resumes and looking to meet people and looking to go to the conference talks. And there are people who are below them who are all in the industry who want to learn and grow and are looking to meet these people above. And the people below them, and it just keeps going down and down. And it all cascades off this idea that there are big feature people that the actual movers and shakers want to come and talk to. And that all spills off of that. So you can evaluate a lot of conferences based on who's going, but there's a lot more to a conference than just the headliners. And you should go to as many as you can, because even if you make one friend every conference, then it was a worthwhile occasion. And there's a great concept to this called, it's an old Roman saying, which is you can never leave the forum until you've made at least one friend. And the concept was taught to young Roman politicians who would go to the forum, which back in the day was essentially a big plaza where you could go and talk to people, and there would be private rooms and all that. But the idea was that in a day and age where we didn't have these big complex administrative buildings, you still needed a central area where you could go and meet people. And you could go and discuss politics and business and military and all these other things. And young politicians would go to these forums almost in a way of job hunting, but more to build their network and their acumen and their political clout. And they were taught, essentially, you must make a friend every day, or else your whole day has been wasted. And if you go to a networking event, if you didn't make a friend, why did you go? And so I would challenge you guys, put the same challenge to you guys. Never leave a networking event until you've made at least one friend. Obviously, the more clout you have and the more political acumen you have, the further along you'll get in your career. Or sorry, I should say, that was jumbled. The more career acumen and the more experience you have and the further along in your career, the more valuable a networking event will be, because now you can offer experience to other people. Other people will come to you. And that will get more and more prevalent the farther along you get in your career. A great example of this, and by the way, I fully realize we're essentially rerunning the slides from class, but I think this is valuable, and it gets it on record for anybody who missed this section of the class. So, Horizon Zero Dawn is a great example of high-level networking from high-level people to other high-level people. Sony, at GDC every year, runs a closed-door event for the staff just from Sony, where their staff, in all their individual studios that Sony publishes, pitch their individual game design concepts. So these are like the God of War guys. This is where the guys for Horizon Zero Dawn pitch their game. All these other game companies that specifically build for Sony. And the guys who make Killzone went up on stage and had this amazing idea for Killzone 87. Or one of their staff leads had an idea where this, pseudo-futuristic lady hunts robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow. And they pitch all these concepts and ask, what should we make? And of course, the entire staff loses their fucking mind, goes, you can't make Killzone 87. What is wrong with you guys? This idea is insane. And they essentially had this whole powwow where the overall staff went, do not make another Killzone, make this. And if What is it? I keep saying Skyward Sword. I don't know why it's stuck in my head. Maybe it's just resentment. If Breath of the Wild hadn't come out that year, I firmly believe Horizon Zero Dawn would have been the game of the year for that year. Because that game is stunning. It is an incredible game. And it was all made because they went to a networking event and they asked other people for insight and they brainstormed. But you have to start somewhere. You can't be a full design company like them right out of the gate. And so the biggest thing is that you just need to go out and you just need to start talking to people. And you need to start being ready to share your ideas and put yourself out there. And just make friends, just like we've been talking about. Just maximize the conversations. Practice talking to people. And the only way to practice is to talk to people. You should ideally have every interaction you have with people, that person should leave the conversation having enjoyed the interaction you guys had. Whatever it was. You know, they come away with a new idea because you shared some new technology with them. Or they really appreciated the way you listened to a problem and helped them problem solve. Or just, you seemed fun and they liked talking to you and you listened. And we're going to talk about some tactics to maximize this. So the first one, obviously, is presentability. And I don't necessarily mean tone or attitude, because those are big things, but I mean the actual unfortunate expectations that we as a society still have around how people present themselves in society, aka show up shaved, show up their, hair clean, get a haircut, get a shave, whatever hygienic things people are expecting you to do, be presentable, be professional. Because all it shows at the end of the day, quite functionally, is that you gave enough of a shit that you tried to look good. And honestly, there are a lot of subtle psychological benefits to someone who dresses up and puts the effort in, has a fundamental positive psychological effect on people's interactions. So just take the time to do those basic things to make sure that you're presentable and your average level of interaction is going to improve. And I just kind of plowed through it. Yeah. It's like your business cards. Presentability is about your first and your second impression. When somebody comes up to talk to you, if you're in a suit versus if you're in a hoodie, is going to completely change how you have an interaction with people. Now, obviously, and this is the core thing, we talked about a concept in the fall term around player bias. This idea that people are going to have expectations around how you build a game and how a game is presented to you. They're going to have expectations around the results of that game. Functionally, this is all I'm talking about in terms of how you interact with people. Showing up in a suit to talk to someone has a very different player bias in real life than showing up and talking to people in a stained Mega Man t-shirt. So make sure that you're meeting these basic levels of presentation, and it will automatically have a strong first impression. This should go without saying. Dress professionally. This does not mean you have to show up in a three-piece suit to everything, but respect the scale of an event and try to dress to impress to some extent. Usually in our field, business casual is a perfect upper limit. That's basically, nice shoes, jeans, and a dress shirt and a blazer. Like comfy but presentable is usually a good blend. Suits are rarely going to come into play unless you're at the business or executive level, because that has its own completely different expectations. But for software people, if you show up with a dress shirt and like nice dark wash, clean jeans, and a pair of nice shoes, you're pretty much hitting the top of expectations there. And this is fluid. If you're an indie, this is going to be even looser. But just understand the nature and look to other people at other events you've gone to. But it's usually better to overdress than underdress in almost all occasions. You got a long way to go before you can just not give a shit and show up in a t-shirt every day. Like, and I say this out of respect, like several of the profs. They can come and do their thing because they've earned that privilege. And they have the acumen and the skill to override any kind of perceptions around, oh, they showed up in a t-shirt. They know what they're talking about, and it comes through in every word they say. At that point, they're beyond these obligations. But especially for you guys trying to make your initial step into the industry, play ball with this and look to how other people in the industry are dressing and how the industry are presenting themselves, because that's a good way to just cheat code this. Yeah. Much like it says here on the slide, get a haircut, do the whole thing, because it just shows that you care. Try to avoid jargon, but always respect people's expertise. If you go to a hardcore networking event and you know everybody knows what they're talking about, don't explain basic engine concepts to people who you know may be from Ubisoft or Unreal. In those cases, if you start using jargon and you get one of those like, huh, looks, then you'd be like, oh, are you familiar with Unreal? And if they aren't, then you explain. But for the most part, try to take it easy on jargon, particularly in slang, especially conversational slang. Things like on fleek. I know that's like 10 years old and I'm grandpa mode for bringing that up, but slang like that is not effective in a networking environment. So try to avoid that as much as possible. It's not about trying to be an ad model. It's about just showing that you care. Oh, and by the way, don't swear. Just don't swear. Again, respect the nature of form. We talked about this. Understand the idea of the scale of the event and try to look to other events you've been to see how people dress at that scale. And remember, it's always better to overdress than underdress. Now, in terms of formal attire, again, blazer, dress shirt is usually about the cap that you need to go for. And be ready to go to people. Be like, hi, I'm Frank from Ubisoft, as many of you heard me come up and say. You don't have to, don't like cut people off mid-conversation, but if you see somebody at a booth and they're talking, and it's a really cool thing, and it's a game demo or an engine demo or a tech demo, and you think it's really interesting, be like, isn't this sick? Like, ask them and see how they reply. And they'll be like, yeah, this is really cool. And now you're having a conversation. It's that easy. This is where, essentially, the interaction is where you back up your initial presentation, your first impression. And if you can have that positive hi, hello, then you're off to the races. Your objective should always be to make that person who you're talking to feel valued, feel like you care about what they're saying, that you've had this, that you're interested in learning about them and from them. Because every conversation is just two people trying to share ideas. And if you're receptive to the other person's ideas, they're going to feel better about the conversation they had with you. And it's just polite. So, we had a great question around this was someone said, how strong is a strong handshake? And the analogy I gave was, you're on the subway with a friend. And as you and your friend are walking through the subway, somebody bumps them. Some jerk, nearly knocks them over. And you have a choice to make. Because your friend is, not you have a choice to make. Your friend is ready to fight that guy. And you don't want them to have a fight on the subway. You never know how it could go. Like, obviously, you don't want violence. And so you go to stop your friend, just putting a hand on their shoulder to get them not to go and do the fight. To politely restrain them. How are you going to put their hand on their shoulder? Are you going to very lightly be like, no, stop, don't do it, do not? Are you going to grab them by the shoulder and be like, don't fight him, don't do it? Of course not. You're going to firmly place your hand on the shoulder and be like, nah, leave it, drop it, don't worry about it. That firm to hold them in place, that is the perfect level of firm handshake. Look people in the eye. Not in a way that's like creepy or like, intimate, but just respectful. Looking people in the eye as they talk shows that you care about what they're saying and that you're paying attention. Let your eye drift, like move around the conversation as people talk. Like let your eye move naturally as people are talking. But try and maintain eye contact with people because it shows that you're invested in what they're saying. Just, don't be creepy about it. This is surprisingly hard. So much of the internet, especially in internet culture with things like Twitter, our culture is built around pushing ideas out into the ether, and it's become this thing of everybody competing to get their idea out. It's a very valuable skill to be receptive to what other people's ideas are and listen to them and modify the conversation based on what they're saying. It's more difficult than you think, but it's a really valuable skill everybody here should be working on. Accept what they're saying and advance the conversation from there. This is the ultimate validation. Yes, your concepts around how to optimize an Unreal Engine are correct, and if you use them, I bet you could do this. Do you see how validating that feels? You're accepting their premise and offering new premises to help build off of their idea. This is the ultimate way to make people feel validated, and you should always look for an opportunity to do this in every conversation you have with people. In order to do this, you may need to ask questions. I think, for example, this particular plugin, Quixel plugin, is bullshit. There's no way you could work. Why? Why is it bullshit? And if they give you this whole idea, you go, okay, that's interesting. And you can either counterpoint or build on it and say, yeah, that's actually true. I hadn't considered the amount of load that's going to put on when you try and bring in all of the model actors into this. Like if we're doing an in-game engine, how is this going to affect, 30 characters in-game? Because I bet you Quixel plugin shits the bed when you put 30 actors into that environment and they're all being dynamically lit and interacting with the static object. Anyway, this is really important. And something I really tried to drive home to you guys when we were prepping for Capstone was be aware at a networking event, people often have shit to do or more people to talk to. Don't monopolize somebody's time for 30 minutes, especially if you get the ear of somebody who's really high value. Like if you're talking to Tim Schafer, respect the fact that Tim's got a lot of shit to do and you should probably only take like 5 minutes of his time at a networking event. And if you want to talk with him more and you're having a good conversation, you give him your business card and hope he gives you his so you can follow up with him later. But be mindful of everybody's time in these environments. Have business cards for exactly that reason. We've talked at length about these. It's a reminder of the great conversation you've had with that person. Now, that catches us up on the network. I want to spend probably the next 20 to 30 minutes pounding through, and I got to move because I got some other stuff to tackle. So, okay, now we're actually fine. So, the idea behind job interviews, and this is the core of it. Everything we've just talked about in networking is directly relevant to a job interview. A job interview, in a weird way, and I'd like to invite you guys to consider it this way, job interviews are just a networking cage match. The intimidation factor is more extreme. The stakes are higher, but you, at the end of the day, are sitting in a room with 1, 2, maybe 3 other people with the objective that you're going to have a conversation. And there's a theme to your conversation, which is very specific, but that honestly helps. And that makes things easier for everybody involved to partake in the conversation to do. And that theme is, how can you solve our problems? Because remember, that is all that you're trying to establish in a job interview. That is all that getting a job is. From the moment you give them your business card, your resume, your cover letter, your job interview, you show up on the first day. Nobody gives a fuck about your story. What they care about is that you can come in and you can solve a problem. And as you continue to work with them, then you'll build your relationship. But your job interview at its core is a simple networking event to have a conversation about how you can solve their problem. Now, to that end, it's their job to test you. And it's their job to see if you can actually handle yourself in this networking environment. Again, the stakes are higher. They have to be really careful about who they hire, because if they pick somebody and they fuck it up, at best, they fire that person in 2 weeks, but now they have to go through the whole process of interviews again. And it's going to be at least another 2 weeks before they can bring somebody in, which means if you fuck it up, you've wasted a month of their time. And so they just want to be, and that's not to say you guys will, but they have to be careful and they have to be mindful that you guys could fuck it up. So they're going to try and throw curveballs at you guys to make sure that you're going to do a good job. And there are good ways to do this, and there are candidly really shitty ways to do this, some of which are interview questions that I fucking hate. And I mentioned one of them in the class 2 weeks ago. But what they come down to is quite simply questions like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? These shitty curveball questions, which essentially prompt the guest who they're interviewing to shit talk themselves or to trap them. I refer to them a lot as gotcha questions, where it's like the interview sitting there and be like, ha ha, how do you deal with this one, motherfucker? And they're bad questions because you're not there to establish why everybody is crap. It looks at job interviews in the reverse direction. The idea of a gotcha question typically is to try and see if a person is willing to be humble, but they essentially create a bad impression around all of your potential employees by asking this question. Any form of this comes in. And you guys should be ready because a lot of employers still use this because, frankly, often for team leads and people like that, this is not part of their job description, or it's not something they ever expected to have to do. And a lot of software team leads get stuck with interviewing for their own team. And they don't know what questions to ask. They're not HR experts. They don't care. And so they're going to just look up the basic interview questions, or because they've heard this interview question ad nauseum for 30 years, they're just going to ask it because that's what you ask in interviews. So I want to caution everybody to be really ready to deal with this question from time to time. And there's really one way to tackle these questions, and that is to understand what the core problem with that type of question is. That idea that what it's trying to do is gotcha, but it's forcing you to talk about a bad thing about yourself. That's the core idea of all of these like bad questions. And what you should do is be humble and accept that you do have flaws. But the best way to deal with these is not to engage them in the way that the employer wants you to engage them in. A core philosophy in martial arts, when someone is throwing a hit at you, somebody's throwing a punch at you, it's not to put your hand out and try and stop the punch. Your goal is to turn the punch and move around it. Don't engage a problem head on. Instead, accept that the problem is a reality in your life and find the best way to turn that problem aside or turn that problem to your advantage. Because in martial arts, if somebody throws a punch and you can move around it, I did martial arts for like a decade, then you can put your opponent off balance. You can create this attack can be used to your advantage. And the same philosophy applies to these shitty questions. And quite simply, what you do is you accept that they're asking you to say something negative about yourself. And you do, because we all have flaws. And we should all be prepared to talk about something that we're not good at. But you don't answer the question that simply. Instead, you answer the question in two parts. You accept that you have a flaw, and you recognize that there is a weakness that you need to work on. And then you tell them what you are doing specifically to improve upon that problem. For example, I have a problem with taking on I get too caught up in new ideas and taking on new projects, and I overfill my schedule and I overcommit myself. But what I'm working on doing is creating overall schedules and budgeting my time out to create a network to ensure that I can always meet the obligations that I set out to accomplish. And create calendar systems and self-tracking and create accountability systems for myself to improve upon that. You see how much better that sounds? Because what they're looking for is a self-awareness and an ability to recognize one's flaws. And you're saying, not only do I recognize my flaws, but I recognize them in a way that I'm building upon them and I'm working to be a better person. And I'm always trying to improve. Who the hell is going to feel bad about that? That demolishes all these questions instantly. So what I would recommend you guys always do when you go into these job interviews is be ready for that question that comes in any form of, why are you shit at something? And be ready to say, yes, I am shit or just not great at a thing, but this is what I'm doing to improve upon it. And you will obliterate that question forever and never have to worry about it again. It's also just a good life skill to be ready to improve. So, that shouldn't be there. That's notes from before. So You have a primary objective to job interviews, and that is to show your employer that you are capable of doing the job that you're trying to do. Ideally, better than any other applicant. This is that concept of raising the bar that we talked about earlier on in the program. Fundamentally, they want you to solve a problem for them. And all the conversation is about is how you can solve the problem for them and how you can do it better than everybody else. If you do it better than everybody else, why are they interviewing anybody else? Why shouldn't you get the job? That's the core thing you want to leave them with whenever you do one of these interviews. Again, lean to your experience. Remember, skills, abilities, competencies. Competencies and abilities are really valuable and hard to teach. And those are the things that you should be trying to draw from your work experience when you're in an interview to their problems. For example, we're trying to solve this networking issue. For example, it's a network tech. Why should, they literally just flat out to look you in the eyes and say, why should we hire you? And you go, well, look, I've worked on 4 other projects. I've been a network technician at Blizzard. I've handled some of their, server-side client issues with both hit scan versus projectile-based damage tracking in Overwatch. And these are all the problems that I had to fix in order to make that work. These are the people that I worked with. These are the teams that I had to manage. And this is the production schedule that I worked under. Based on all of that experience, I feel like I'm more than qualified to handle the issues you guys are dealing with here at, let's say, CCP around tracking and on doing projectile tracking in ship-to-ship combat. What do you say? You go, oh, next question, moving on, done, killed it. Experience is irrefutable. And if you've done a thing and you can point to the thing and say, I've done this thing, and this is how I did it, and this is why I did it well, and this is what I learned from it, especially if you can say, well, and these are the issues I've had over what, and in doing that, I learned that you can do it even better with these things, and these are things I'd like to apply with you guys. You win. It's over. Like, just sign here, get your paycheck, you're done. Jobs. But always find that way to go above and beyond what you know they're asking for. You don't need to know what other applicants are providing. Most people, the vast majority of applicants, are only going to hit the basic expectations of the job interview. They're going to answer job interview questions to say, you need X, I can do X. But you should always be striving to find a Y and a Z that you can add to that equation. I can do X, but I can also add in my background in Y and my experience in Z. And if you do that, you will automatically be in that top 10% being considered for a straight up job. That's not to guarantee you'll get the job, but if you can always guarantee you're in the top 10%, that high percentile of people who are being considered, you will get the job sooner or later. And it comes back to that idea of yes and that we were talking about before. Yes, I can do the job, and I can make it better by doing this. But job interviews also have a personal side. Remember, this is a networking cage match. A truly successful job interview should end with them liking you. And going back to what we talked about before, if they're liking you, that's often because you've given them a positive interaction. As much as job interviews are you presenting yourself, the ultimate victory is when you can get them talking about their business and you're sitting there attentively listening. Because there's that fundamental psychological trigger that says, if I've shared my ideas, I have had a positive interaction. And if you can create that in them, they're going to attach that positive feeling of interaction to the whole job interview, and it's going to massively increase your odds of being hired. It's all about that positive social experience. They should remember you, and they should remember, man, he had some cool ideas. We went and looked up that Quixel shit he was talking about in the interview, or we went and played some more Overwatch based on what he told us about his projectile tech, and holy shit, this is really interesting. Or, fuck, this guy's going to have a great career even if we don't hire him. Because if they have a great impression of you, even if you don't get this job, when the next job comes up, if you've done this right, they're going to remember you and they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, we had another position open up that we'd love to talk to you about. All the same forms are at play as in networking. Dress to impress. Hygiene is not optional. Show that you care. act and talk and speak professionally. Try, in a job interview, often you'll know that they can accept the jargon and you can get more technical, but overall, meet all those same forms: firm handshake, maintain eye contact when you talk to people, all that jazz. If you can meet all of those fundamental networking forms, plus meet all that expectation of raising the bar, creating positive experience, answering these questions about yourself and show your own expected growth, all these things, you will obliterate job interviews. So here's some general tips and tricks for job interviews, and we'll wrap it up after that. First, do your goddamn research. This is going to be one of the things we talk about in one of our final lectures for the year, but you're being able to understand more than what they're asking for in the job interview is very important. For example, the job posting might simply say we're looking for a network technician. But if you know that Blizzard is hiring, if it says network technician Overwatch, and you go and look at Overwatch's tech, if you understand exactly what is happening server-side, client-side, when you're dealing with all of that tech, all that network tech, and you can answer questions and answer their needs way beyond what's defined in the job interview, that's a huge bar raise. And all you have to do that is play some Overwatch and do some research on how they're handling their server architecture, and you are going to do way, way better immediately. So if you understand game tech, if you understand their company structure, if you understand where they're at as a company, for example, you might know that you need to build their architecture from the ground up. You might have to do an entire engine design for them, or you might be having to build their Unreal Engine framework for them, or build out what plugins they're going to use, or their lighting, or whatever. If you know they're a brand new indie startup, you'll know you'll need to do a lot more of that fundamental architecture, and you can answer questions in that framework and literally say to them, listen, I know you guys have just opened. I know these are the kinds of things you guys are going to be dealing with. Here's my background in building engines. Boom, done, game over, you win. So doing more research around what your employer would be looking for beyond the interview is going to give you a ton of ammunition to draw to their needs beyond what they flat out ask for. Like we were talking about before, prep for the bad questions, prep for the good questions. Be ready to say, look, I know you guys are looking for this kind of stuff. Here's all my experience. I know you guys want to know what I'm bad at. Here's how I'm getting better at that things I'm bad at. Oh, by the way, don't do that stupid fucking answer to these questions of, well, I just work too hard. I just work so hard that I just get tired. That's not a flaw. Stop it. And it's as bad an answer as that question is. Be fashionably early whenever possible. That doesn't mean 30 minutes or an hour early, but be there 5 or 10 minutes early. It shows that you respect their time and that you're enthusiastic about the interview. I would say 10 minutes is pushing it. If you're 5 minutes early to an interview, that's perfect. And just be polite and say, I'm happy to wait. I know I'm a little early, but when you're free. It's a polite way of showing that you're enthusiastic for the interview without fucking up their schedule. Plus, maybe you can catch another applicant on their way out and see, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they scared? It give you ideas about how the interview is going to go. If they leave happy, then you probably know the interview is going to be chill. But if they leave then you know you're in for a rough ride interview, and they're going to, kind of put you through paces. And be honest. I've told you guys this before. Lying will torpedo you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But the moment you have a reputation for being a liar, your whole brand of personality is tainted for years. Do not lie. But be confident. If you're being asked, what are your flaws? Own them, because nobody's perfect. And if these guys are expecting you to be perfect, then it's going to be an incredibly toxic work environment. And I caution you to consider whether or not you want to work for them. So be confident, but be ready to be open about your flaws as well. You've been given this job interview for a very good reason, and it's probably not to go, let's listen to what this idiot has to say and waste 20 minutes of their time. Of course not. They brought you into the room because they know you know what you're talking about. They know you can do the job, and they want to make sure they're getting the right person for the job. If you're sitting in the room, you're already at a tacit point where they agree that you are competent. Now all you have to do is just show them you're the most competent of those people. So be confident and remind yourself you deserve to be in that room. And this is the trick to getting them to talk about themselves. Remember, positive interaction is all about sharing ideas. And if they share their ideas, they'll feel like they had a more positive interaction. So ask them questions about the job. It shows that you're a critical thinker. It shows that you're curious. It shows that you want the job, make sure the job is right and it would be a good fit. And it shows that you care about their experiences. And all of those are very positive things. Keep your answers tight and to the point. They have shit to do. They probably have 10 more interviews. Be respectful of their time. But don't be a robot. Don't be like, yes, no, 27, I like cats. Give comprehensive but concise answers. It's just like we talked about for presentation day. Brag. If you have shit to brag about, brag away. And don't have an ego about it. There's a huge difference between confidence and overconfidence and ego. Don't talk about your accomplishments like you're better than them or like nobody else has accomplished these things. But share your accomplishments in that you're grateful and happy to be at this higher tier where you've gone to the point where some of your stuff is recognized. Because candidly, you're just starting out. There are many people who have done amazing stuff. And you should just be happy about the fact that you are on your way to joining the ranks of exceptional people and that people are validating your work. Not that you're king hot shit of the universe, because you're not. But just be relaxed, be confident, and have conversation. If somebody makes a joke about, you go into digital extremes and they take a shot at Ubisoft, laugh and join and don't necessarily be toxic or say negative things in your relaxed state, but joke with them. Be comfortable, because that disarms them and brings the whole positive interaction feeling up. It's like wild animals. If you have a relaxed state, they'll respond with a relaxed state. But if you come in tense and scared, they're going to, even if they don't notice it, even if they aren't cognizant of it, they're going to be conscious and cognizant of it, or not cognizant, it's going to get their back up, and they're going to have more anxiety about the interview. If you're calm and relaxed and confident, you'll make them feel confident about the interview too. Networking is dating. If you really had a good time talking with somebody, follow up with them later. And that doesn't mean as you're leaving the interview, email me I had a great time. But a day or two afterward, just say, hey, I had a wonderful time talking with you guys. I really hope the job works out and that you guys can find a place for me to work, however you want to frame it. But validate that you really enjoyed the conversation and you're enthusiastic about working with them. Because it's a reminder that you care, it's a reminder that you're enthusiastic, and if you had a good impression, it's going to show that you're willing to go that extra mile, and it might just be the thing that clinches the job for you. It's in one. Just like dating. If you had a good time and you're like, hey, I had a great time, you want to hang out again sometime? And they don't get back to you, don't send them 8 more messages, because then you're just never going to hear from them. Send one and leave it be. Then this was artifact from the previous. That's it. Those are my biggest things for job interviews. If you're at all curious or this doesn't cover or you're still uncomfortable or unsure about anything or I missed something, then bring it up in class next week or, send me an email or come see me after school hours. Next week calms down a lot, so I'll be around the office a lot next week. But feel free to come and talk to me at any point or we can open it up for discussion beginning of class next week. But with that being said, I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in class soon. Cheers.